The tide may be turning on interest rates with the United States cutting theirs by 0.5 percentage point. The major decision overnight from the Federal Reserve comes as inflation in the US slows, but on the other hand, job figures soften. North America correspondent Carrington Clark is following the story for us from Washington. Carrington, good morning. So what has the Fed said about its reduction?
Yeah, this is quite a dramatic move by the Federal Reserve, which is the United States Central Bank. It's the biggest cut in 16 years, and it signifies a change in focus. For the past 2.5 years, they've almost been solely focused on trying to bring down high inflation, and that's why we saw that series of interest rate hikes in 2022 and 2023. What today's decision means is that the Fed has now judged that inflation is effectively under control. It's still slightly above their target, but they believe that the time is right now to cut interest rates, which is effectively just releasing a little bit of the brake on the economy, because they are growing increasingly concerned about the unemployment figures. We've started to see a slight rise in unemployment, and although we heard from the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, that at this point they are not overly concerned about unemployment, it's clear that they believe that they need to cut at least slightly at this point, and we are expecting to see a series of cuts both this year and next year in order to give that impetus, a bit of a catalyst to help strengthen the economy, to ensure that we don't see a dramatic rise in unemployment and the potential of inflation. But what Jerome Powell also made clear today is that they will be data dependent, and they will determine what interest rate settings are correct based on the data that they receive in the coming months.
We are not on any preset course. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting. We know that reducing policy restraint too quickly could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing restraint too slowly could unduly weaken economic activity and employment.
Now, the US Federal Reserve is the most important central bank in the world, and what they do has impacts on financial markets around the world and also has impacts on other central banks. You can be assured that the Australian Reserve Bank will be watching this closely, and perhaps will be looking to see what impact it is having on the US economy, and will then be using that information to determine what interest rate settings are right for Australians, which is, of course, obviously of great importance, particularly to those people with mortgages.
Indeed. And politically, Carrington, what impact, if any, will this have on the US presidential race?
Yeah, we're already starting to see the different political spin on this particular decision. The Kamala Harris Democratic side is trying to frame this as evidence that things are starting to improve. They're not saying that inflation has been defeated, but they say this is welcome news and that they remain focused on trying to bring prices down and are listing some of their policy goals. On the Republican side, even before this decision was made, we'd heard from the Trump campaign that a rate cut was evidence that the American economy is in trouble, that the reason that the Fed has been forced into this action is because things are starting to deteriorate, and much of the messaging from the Trump campaign has been that Kamala Harris would herald economic chaos and potentially a recession. So we will see this play into the US presidential election. Interest rates are a different issue in America than Australia. Most people here have fixed rate mortgages, so it doesn't have the same dramatic impact for those people who are carrying mortgages, carrying loans, but it does impact things like credit cards and car loans and other things where you've got a floating mortgage, and even more importantly is the impact it has on business investment. But this will be a critical issue in the US election. Inflation has been a critical issue, so it'll be interesting to see how both sides try to play with this messaging.
Yes, will be indeed. Hey, Carrington, thank you.